Hi there, thanks for joining. Today we take a look at tonal values. What are they and why do they play such an important role in improving your paintings? And in addition to this video, I'll upload a second video tomorrow with some practical step-by-step painting exercises. Tonal value is a term we use to indicate how light or dark a color is. And they are of great importance if you want to draw or paint realistically. And at first it's easiest to explain with a black and white photo. Although the photo itself is two-dimensional, we see depth. The illusion of depth on this flat surface is created by several things. For instance, larger objects in the foreground, smaller objects in the background, overlap, perspective, and so on. But one of the most important things that creates the illusion of depth is the interplay of light and dark colors. It's fun to try at this moment to look at this photograph with the focus on tonal values. So only look at dark spots, light spots and all kind of gray spots in between. So you could say that this photo has a wide range of tonal values from light, very light to very dark. And now imagine that you have a palette with paint, only black and white paint, and also all kinds of gray shades in between. Then it would be easy to imagine that when you would have put a great sketch of this photograph on your canvas, it would only be a matter of putting the right values at the right spots. A sort of painting by number. Now it's important to mention that not in every situation or scene or setting do you have the total range of values between pure black and pure white. That depends on the situation, of course. For instance, in this picture, this is the darkest value and it isn't close to black, and this is the lightest value. So the total range of values must lie in between these two values when you start painting this. And in this photo it's the other way around. If you search here for the lightest value, you see that it's something like this. So the lightest light in this picture isn't pure white, it is darker than pure white. And the lightest tonal value is something like this. Now these examples were all in black and white, but our world is colorful, and the thing is, colors themselves have tonal values as well. So for instance, yellow is an obvious example, I think. Yellow is a very light color, and purple, for instance, is a very dark color. But of course, if you have a yellow banana, then you see that there are lighter yellow parts where the light hits the banana, and of course there are darker yellow parts there where the light cannot come. So that's the shadow color of yellow is a darker yellow, and the same goes for all the other colors of course. So the play of light and shadow influences the tonal values of colors. Now let's head back to the previous photograph that we saw in black and white and now see what happens when we turn it into color. And then you see it looks very pleasing right straight away, but the idea, the importance of tonal values remains the same. We can get distracted by all the beautiful colors that we see, but tonal value remains the most important attribute of the colors that you see. And in the color mixing videos I already explained that when you look at a color, when you want to mix a color, you look at three things. You look at what color family is it? Is it red, yellow, purple, for instance? And then you can look at how saturated is the color. And the third one was tonal value. And now we've learned that of these three things, in fact, tonal value is the most important part. When you mess up the color a little bit, it doesn't matter that much, but when you mess up a tonal value, for instance, if I make the white of the eyes too light in this photograph, then you see immediately your painting or photograph in this instance doesn't look realistic anymore, it becomes flat. And that's why tonal values are very important for realism. A lot of times when you encounter a problem in your painting, that you think something isn't right, most of the times it has to do with tonal values. Even when people say, I want to paint the whiskers of a cat and I struggle with painting thin lines, most of the times it's not the problem of the thin line, but it's the problem of the color that they take to make that thin line. If you do a very bright white line on top of the head of the cat, it looks weird and it looks like a thick line. But when you look closely at the photograph and you see that there's actually color in the whiskers, so that the contrast between the head of the cat and the whiskers itself is smaller than when you would put on a straight white line, then your painting will immediately look more realistic. And also it solves the problem of the thin line. You don't even have to paint that thin, because when the contrast is smaller between the colors, then the line looks thinner by itself already. And tonal values also play a big role in creating the sense of depth. And I've already discussed this in the video about aerial perspective, but in short, here you see that the difference between values are very small in the background, and in the foreground the difference is way bigger between the values. The contrast is bigger. And most of the times when we are painting a part like this in the background, we tend to exaggerate the small contrasts because we're focused on that certain area, and we lose sight of the bigger picture, of the total range of tonal values. And then the sense of depth will get lost. So now we know, I hope, that tonal values play a very big role in your painting. But the problem is we easily make all kinds of mistakes when we try to judge the tonal values, when we try to see how dark or light the color is. Our observation gets tricked very easily. For instance, if you look at a dark part and in that dark part you see a slightly lighter part, chances are that you paint these slightly lighter parts way too light. And it's hard for us to see that this lighter part is quite dark in reality. And it's the same the other way around. In light parts, chances are that we exaggerate the slightly darker parts. So then you get all kinds of problems, that when you paint a portrait and you see a wrinkle and you paint that wrinkled one with black paint, then the portrait looks way too old all of a sudden. So these observational errors have a great effect on the result. If you make mistakes with tonal values, your painting might look flat and that kind of stuff. But this is nothing to be ashamed of. We all do this. I do it myself every day as well. It gets easier when you paint more and when you learn to observe more, because observation is something you can train. But let me show you some more examples. It happens a lot when people paint eyes or teeth, for example. Our brain tells us that the white of the eyes is white and the teeth are white. But due to lighting conditions and the form of the eye is a ball, you can see all kinds of tonal values and colors in the white of eyes. And the white of the eyes can sometimes be quite dark. And the same goes for teeth, because the jaw is formed like this, a horseshoe. So there are lighter and darker parts, and yeah, sometimes teeth are quite dark. We all know these examples that you see a painting where the teeth pop out of the painting because they're painted way too light. So the problem here is more that we know it is white and we cannot believe how dark it sometimes is, or how much color it can contain. And here I have another example. The piano bench itself is black, but because of the light that shines on the piano bench, you see that the black gets very light. And the other way around, you see that the white of the pages of the book is quite dark, because it's in shadow. So that's very tricky, because we think white pages, black piano bench, but you see what can happen. And it's always hard to not fall in that trap that we make ourselves. But there are ways to train and to learn to see these traps, of course. If you know that these traps exist, it gets better already. And as you are painting, you can of course do things like, I see a dark part, but how dark is it in reality compared to pure black, for instance? So you get a sense of, okay, this value is very close to black, or maybe it's rather more to the middle. And same goes for white. If you look at light parts, compare it to pure white, and have a look. Is it really white or is it darker than I thought? And again, it helps if you know that there is a chance that you get fooled. For instance, if you look at light things and you see a darker part, instantly tell yourself, watch out, maybe I get fooled. It might be that this darker part in reality still is rather light. Another thing that helps, and there are no rules, but sometimes you can try things out, and a rather good thing to practice this with the tonal values is by starting your painting with the darkest values that you see. So in another video I told always start with the background and work to the foreground. That's a way to build a painting, but you can also do this approach a few times to get a good feeling for the tonal values. So that you start with the darkest parts and then you search for the slightly lighter parts, and then you mix a color that's slightly lighter, and then you go all the way to the lightest value. You build your painting from dark to light. It's a kind of a puzzle, and it's very fun to do and very, very helpful. And there are also tools and other techniques that you can use. A great tool to judge tonal values is a grayscale value finder. You see 10 values from light to dark, and with this value finder you can easily compare. You can hold it in front of your subject and you can check how dark is this value in reality. And the fun thing about this, of course, is that you don't even need to paint in that instant. You can just use the value finder and look around, make it a sort of a quiz. Just ask yourself, how dark is this color, what would I do? And then compare with the value finder, how light or dark is it in reality. And of course you can buy one, but even more fun is making one yourself, and we're gonna do that in the next video. It's also a great training, basic training for understanding tonal values. So tomorrow I'll upload the second video with these practical exercises, and I hope you'll join me, and yeah, let's have fun painting together. Thanks for watching and see you next time.